Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. It's Tuesday, time to talk about some new releases coming out this Friday, October 8th. There's about 400 albums coming out this week. I got 14 on the list for today. There's a bunch of links down below. Make sure you check them out. There's links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. Make sure you go check all that out. Of course, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button down below. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release episodes. Like I said in the intro, there's about 400 albums coming out this week. I'm only going to talk about 14 on the show today, though. So if there's something you're looking forward to, I don't talk about today, make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to picking up this week. And like always, if you're unable to find any of these in your local brick and mortar stores, I'll put links down below. Make sure you go check them out in the comment section. I'll put all of the links for all the 14 albums I talk about. Plus, I've got a whole expanded list of stuff that I just don't have time to talk about on the show. There's typically 30 or 40 albums I put links down below for. So today's one of those rare shows where I'm going to start off talking about albums that I'm really excited for, but probably a lot of people out there probably haven't heard of before. These are all albums by the band Hum. They were a 90s alternative rock band. I guess they're classified technically as shoegaze, but all three of them are great albums. Actually, I think there's actually four of them. I think their latest album, which is called Inlet, was also getting reissued, but I didn't see it on any new release lists for this week. But the first one is Electra 2000. It's a Hum's debut album. Sorry, it's not their debut album. It's their second studio album. I'm not sure why they're not reissuing their first album. But this is their second album. Was released back in 1993. There's two different versions of this going to be available. There's a black version, which the black version is the only one available on Amazon. And then there's a colored version. So the color is red for Electra 2000. The colored version is only going to be available through Polyvinyl Records website. I'll put links down below for both the Amazon black version and the one that's available on Polyvinyl Records website. It's a double LP cut at 45 RPM. It's going to sound fantastic. This is an album that, of all Hum's albums, it's probably one I've listened to the least, but there's some really good stuff on there. You can hear the progression on their first couple of albums leading up to what I think is their masterpiece, which was their third studio album. But the band worked with the original artists to recreate the album covers for these. So, because that's a lot of times I've noticed as you get some of these reissues, especially like 90s reissues, where they're only available originally on CD. And then they reissue them on vinyl, and it looks like they just kind of blew up the cover, and it's kind of blurry. It doesn't look great. Doesn't have the crispness that you would really expect for the album artwork to have. So it sounds like they kind of went back through and made sure that all these album covers are going to look as fantastic as the music, I'm sure, is going to sound. And then you've got You'd Prefer an Astronaut, which was released back in 1995. It was their third studio album. This is on black and green versions. So this is a green version is the one that's through Polyvinyl Records. And this is their masterpiece, in my opinion. It's for me personally, it was one of my most influential albums of the 90s. I was in a rock band in the mid part of the 90s, and this is an album that I would listen to a lot, and really our band would kind of draw some of the influence really from this one album. Like I said, with the other one, this is all newly remastered, 45 RPM, 2 LPs. It's one that if I've been looking forward to this release in particular because I do have I think it was a 2012 or 2014 pressing from SRC Vinyl, which doesn't sound really great. So this being reissued, remastered, 45 RPM, I'm sure this is going to sound far superior than anything that SRC has released for this album. Because I think there was two pressings I think the SRC did of this album. One I've got a copy of, and then the other one I think they've had on pre-order for probably 5 years. And if you know anything about SRC Vinyl, they're horrible with their reissues. So like I said, that one's going to be a great one I'm going to grab. I should also add that all three of these are going to run you about $33 online, which is, for a 2 LP, 45 RPM, I don't think it's a bad price. And then the third one is Downward is Heavenward, which is their fourth album, released in 1998. There's black versions, and then there's a yellow version. 2 LP, 45 RPM, like I said, same with all the other albums, newly remastered. It's going to sound great. This is the album that I don't think it's not as good as You'd Prefer an Astronaut. I think the band, they had some success with Astronaut. I think Stars was like the one track that got some radio play off that album. But I think with Downward is Heavenward, they tried to evolve their music a little bit and go off in maybe a little bit different area, even though it's very similar musically to everything else they've done in their career. But you can see some growth in their music. And while there is some tracks that I can kind of do without on this album. There's still some really great tracks that I think makes this album worth owning. I guess I should add that Polyvinyl Records did reissue Downward is Heavenward back in 2019. It was on blue vinyl. Sounds great. I do have a copy of it, but it was really limited, sold out pretty fast. If you want to grab a copy of it on Discogs, I think it runs about $100. So it's great to see that that is also being reissued this week with those other albums. So there is a new album coming out this week that I'm starting to hear some buzz about. I'm starting to see some people talk about it online. Starting to see more promo stuff in record stores about it. But, it's one that I probably won't pick up. I'll definitely stream it and check it out. But I'm not the biggest fan of re-recorded music. But I don't know. We'll see how it sounds. But this is Neil Young, Before and After. This is his 45th studio album. It's going to run you about $30 online. So what Neil did was he took 13 of his favorite tracks from across his career. And he didn't try to pick like the most popular stuff. These are all tracks that actually several of these I've never heard the original versions of before, and that's why I'm kind of I might pick it up, I might not, depending on how it sounds. But these are all solo acoustic versions of those tracks, so it's like I said, it's one I'm definitely interested in. For $30, we'll see how that one sounds. This is it's almost kind of like a journey through his musical career, which I think is kind of cool because he didn't pick, like I said, he didn't pick the big tracks that everyone knows. He tried to pick some of his like deeper cuts that I think is, if you're going to take that route and record an album like that, I think it's a better way to do it than, just to pick like a greatest hits and do it that way. And then you've also got the debut EP, the self-titled debut EP from Boygenius getting reissued this week. This came out back in 2018. This is going to be on yellow vinyl. It's going to run you about $24 online. So this is a super group. You got Phoebe Bridgers in here. You got Lucy Dacus, who's the third, who am I forgetting? Julian Baker. Those three put this super group together back in 2018. This was all self-recorded, self-produced EP. I think there's 6 tracks on here. They recorded all in like 4 days. What happened was each member came in with 1 or 2 tracks that they had written and kind of started working on together and kind of formed this album. And I'm not the biggest Boygenius fan. I know they've won. I think they won Best New Artist, or they were nominated for some awards over the last year or two. A lot of people really loved their latest album. I was kind of mixed on it. There were a couple of tracks I really liked, some other ones that I could kind of do without. But this is a really good EP. I love the way that this super group kind of started with this EP. You got 3 really interesting albums from Fiona Apple getting reissued this week. The first one is When the Pawn. This was released back in 1999. It was her second studio album. It's going to run you about $25 online. Of course, this was the follow-up to her gigantic debut album, Tidal, which was released back in 1996. Which, when Tidal was released, it was absolutely huge. It sold over 3 million copies. I think it was number 15 or 16 on the Billboard charts. Had a couple of really huge hits on there. Kind of widely seen as one of the better albums of 1996. And a lot of times, artists would kind of struggle with trying to follow that up, and she really didn't with this album. I think this is as good as Tidal is. I think When the Pawn is maybe an even better album. It actually charted a little bit better. I think it was 13 on the Billboard charts versus 15 or 16 the Tidal was. It only went to it sold a little over 1 million copies. So 1999, it was pretty big selling album. I think it was nominated for a couple of Grammys. Ended the year on a lot of best of lists. It was just a great album, a great follow up to that debut album. And then you've also got Extraordinary Machine being reissued. This was released back in 1995. Her third studio album. It's a double LP. It's going you about $31. It did sell really well. I think it even charted even better than her first 2 albums did. It was kind of met with a little bit more mixed reviews though. This is an album that I wasn't a big fan of it when it was released. I know a lot of people are, and I see a lot of people that have been really looking forward to this album in particular getting reissued this week. I've revisited it a few times over the years. I was just never able to get into this album. I love our first couple of albums. I love the album that came out next. But this one, I think, was largely kind of a miss for me, even though I know a lot of people looking forward to it this week. And then the third and final album from her is The Idler Wheel. This album has got to be the longest title of any album I've ever seen. I'm not going to say the whole thing. I'll put, you can go check it out online. Super long. It's, it was all actually taken from a poem that she had written. And it's a great album. It was released back in 2012. It was her 4th studio album. It's going about $24 online. This was actually her highest charting album, even though all the success that she had with Tidal, with her first couple of albums. This one was actually the one that hit number 3 on the Billboard charts. It sold really well. It was a big album. Made a lot of greatest of best of year end lists. I think it was nominated for a bunch of awards also. Just a really great album. If all you're familiar with just with just title, I definitely recommend going back and checking out a couple of those other albums. A couple of really great jazz releases coming out this week. I'm only familiar with one of the two of them though, and these are both part of the Verve Records by Request series. They're both pressed at Third Man Records here in Detroit. I'm sure they're going to sound fantastic. They're both going to run you about $30 online. So the first one is Charlie Parker, Now is the Time, The Genius of Charlie Parker, number 3. This was originally released back in 1957, which was 2 years after Charlie's death in 1955. And this was actually an album that was released back in 1953 under the name Charlie Parker, I think is what it was just released under. But what this version is it's that 53 version, but with the first 4 tracks on it have alternate takes. So it's got a little bit of a different feel to it. I love this album. It's one I've streamed a bunch of times. I'm not, I don't have a whole lot of Charlie's albums. I think I've only got maybe 2 or 3 of them, but this is definitely one that I'm going to grab this week. I don't have a copy of it. Like I said, just a great album. If you're unfamiliar with Charlie Parker, this is a great album to start out with. And then the second one is Melvin Jackson, Funky Skull. This was released back in 1969. It is his one and only album as a band leader. This is the one that I'm unfamiliar with. So, like I said, same thing with the other ones. Pressed a Third Man. It's going to sound great. But so Melvin Jackson was actually the bassist in the Eddie Harris band, and I think there's 1 or 2 tracks on this album that are Eddie Harris songs. So I'm unfamiliar with it, but it's, from what I understand, from what I've read about it, it's very avant-garde, very different from a lot of other jazz music that you would hear. And by the late '60s, that's kind of the direction a lot of jazz music was going. It was very avant-garde, very kind of psychedelic themes in it. And that's according to the reviews I've read of this. It's very much in line with this album. It's definitely one I'll check out this week. The next album is one that's, I guess, kind of along the same lines as those Hum releases. An album that I'm really looking forward to, I'm really interested in. Probably a lot of people out there probably have never heard of it before. This is Chunk, No Captain Chunk, pardon my French. This was released back in 2013. It was their second studio album. This is an expanded edition that they're releasing for the 10th anniversary. It's going to be a red smoke vinyl. It's going to run you about $24 online. This is the first time this expanded edition has been available on vinyl. I think it's only been available on CD in like 2014, I think it was released. But this has got 4 bonus tracks on there, so that's what separates it from the other pressings that's been released over the years. For unfamiliar with this band, they're kind of like they're a French band. Very much like I guess like a metalcore kind of punk band. Really interesting stuff. I think this is their best album. I think it's their most popular album also. And it's probably the only one that I'm really interested in owning. Like I said, I'll probably grab a copy of it this week. And the next album is one I've had on pre-order for a while. I've been excited for it since it was first announced. This is the reissue of the self-titled debut album from The Living End. It was released back in 1998. This is a 2 LP release. It's going to run about $40 online. There's 2 different versions that are going to be available. There's a black version, and then there's a red version. This is an expanded 25th anniversary release they're doing. The single LP version was released back in October. And, of course, I picked that up because of how much I love this album. In my opinion, this is one of the best or most underrated punk albums of the later part of the 90s. An absolutely incredible album from beginning to end. Living End is a Australian punk band. So when this album was reissued back in October, the 2 LP release was also released, but it was only available in Australia. So it took me, it's taken a couple of months for me to wait for it to get stocked over here in the U.S. so I can grab a copy of it. So what separates this release from the 1 LP release is the 2 LP release has a live show from 1998 on there. I think it was originally broadcast on the radio, so I'm not really sure the sound quality on it. If they're putting this on vinyl, I'm sure it's going to sound good. I'm sure it's not like some bootleg. I've heard some horrible, radio show bootlegs over the years that sound like they've been recorded in someone's pocket. I'm sure this is not going to sound like that. It's definitely what I'm looking forward to grabbing this week. Also comes with a 36-page booklet. It's got rare photos in there, some stuff from the band in there. I think it's going to be a really good release. Like I said, if you're unfamiliar with this album, at least stream it and check it out. Like I said, the single LP release is available for like $25 if you're interested in it. But like I said, just a great album. The next album is one that I debated whether or not he was even going to have on the show today. I'm not a big fan of this artist, but I know this is going to be a huge album. I'm just not sure how many copies they're going to sell on vinyl, but this is Nicki Minaj, Pink Friday 2. It's her new album. It's going to be on electric blue vinyl. It's going to run you about $33 online. It's her 5th studio album. This is the follow-up, or I guess it's not really follow-up, but it's the second part of her debut album, released back in 2010. This is her first album in 5 years. like I said, it's going to be a huge album. She's already released 2 singles off of it. They both charted really well. I know one of the singles, I think, hit the #1 on the Billboard charts here in the U.S. I'm just not sure how many copies are going to be sold on vinyl. We'll see how well it sells, though. And then the last album is a really good one that sat on the shelves for probably at least a month or 2 before I finally decided to check it out. This is Soccer Mommy, Sometimes Forever, released in June of last year. It's her 3rd studio album. It's going to be on Bone Vinyl. It's going to run you about $23 online. So she's a really interesting musician. So she was born in Switzerland, was raised in Nashville. She lists like Natalie Imbruglia is a big influence. The Dixie Chicks, Avril Lavigne, and you can hear all that in her music. This, like I said, it's really interesting music, really interesting kind of like pop rock album. If you want to go back through and check it out, it's like I said, it was sat on the shelves for a while. I started seeing it like everywhere. It's kind of like the Black Pumas album a couple of years ago, where I was just seeing it everywhere. Finally, I decided to check it out. It's kind of how this album was also, and I was really impressed with it. You know, for $23, I don't own a copy of it. I'll probably grab a copy of it this week though. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to picking up this week. I think it's going to be a great week. Like I said, I got all those Hum albums on pre-order. I've got that Living End album on pre-order. I'll probably grab the Charlie Parker album, maybe that Melvin Jackson album, maybe that Chunk No Captain Chunk album, maybe Boygenius. A lot of great stuff coming out this week. But let me know what you're picking up. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give the old thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.